Welcome to the G Spot.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Hello everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League's G-Spot, otherwise known as the DGT G-Spot, and joining me is...
SRI?
Yeah, it's Ray. All right, Ray. Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know what the G-Spot is, get a book and find out, or maybe actually don't look on the internet, you'll get into a rabbit hole you do not want to go down. But yeah, the DGT G-Spot, however, is where we get to look at weird and wonderful things that happen in Dynamic GT League races, and people can request us to look at different things. They can even ask us to look at random stuff, I suppose, as well. Excuse me. I mean, what do you reckon, Ray? What would you reckon? Let's say if Rory Alexander said, "Yeah, give us your analysis on this video clip," then would you do it?
Who?
Rory.
Rory?
Yeah, you know, the Rory. I would have called him by his other name, Aries, but you call him Rory.
Alright.
Yeah. I mean, I was generally mean anyone, but I said Rory because you fucking know him when you went, ooh.
Yeah, well, I think it's for the drivers, to be honest, but if he wants us to go over one of his racing incidents, we'll go over it as long as he likes constructive criticism.
Yeah. Or he likes bad jokes. Well, let's put it this way: if you're going to ask us to look at anything, you've got to have a sense of humour. But anyway, okay. So the DGT G Spot this week. This is number 21, and we've not got loads to look at in terms of items, but we've got loads to look at in terms of footage. Okay, so the first one we're going to have a look at, Ray, is from Race 8 that we've just done in Dynamic GT League at Sardegna A, where there was a little bit of a crash, shall we say, at the first real corner. Not Hayes, it was at Brickbend. So yeah, there was a little bit of a crash.
Just a teeny crash.
Yeah.
I'll puff out.
I think I reckon you might be right. So I think we go and have a look at this in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. So G1 Race 8. That's not a big one. This is a big one. That referencing the big one from last week's G Spot and the other big one. But anyway, so I'm looking here then at Steve F1. It got a decent start down towards Hayes, which is this left-hander. We don't really call it turn 1 because it's not normally a corner. So Steve F1 happily trundling along down towards Brickbend hairpin, a little bit of nudging at the back. Steve comfortably in the lead, braking, and here comes SRI and Bosch! Oh, and it's chaos behind. Yeah, so we kind of saw a view of this, and we're going to have a look at a few different views. So now we're going to have a look at SRI from the spectator view, see what we can see here. What a move, that's for certain, because couldn't even make the corner on his own.
Shit.
Yeah, so now we're going to have a look from Steve F1's view, and this I think is going to be quite interesting. So Steve F1 brakes, the corner, everything's nice and calm, and there goes SRI, and in comes SGP as well. Interesting. Okay, well, let's have a look from Demon R's view then. Demon R not close enough to attack Steve F1, gets the braking done, nice and calm, spots SRI coming, turns out, and in comes SGP as well, and Bob, by the looks of it, and yeah, it is Bob, and then Rich coming through. So we'll have a look at SRI then, shall we? So he's managed to get up to 3rd place, and yeah.
100 metres.
Yeah, breaks at 100 metres, we'll come to that again in a moment, and yeah. Braking at 100 metres, you're not making that corner. Let's put it this way. SGP nearly hits the barrier. Bit of dirt on the tyres there. Jason coming past. I think SGP may also have been a little late on the brakes, and yeah, couldn't quite get that stopped as well. But I don't know what happened behind him. So Jason gave SGP a little bit of a nudge there. And let's see where Jason, a little dab of the brakes off, and Jason doesn't make the corner himself. So Jason does an SRI all on his own. Let's have a look from Dave the Harp's view then. So this is behind Jason and SGP. So Dave sort of looking up the inside, thinking better of it. Got his braking right. Oh, I don't know if he has. Here comes Bob. I don't know. Maybe Dave did get his braking right. Maybe he was just nudged a bit. So now we're on board with Bob. So we'll see if Dave, he would have been all right or not. Yeah, probably. Bob, that's a gap that disappears quickly. Gives SGP a bit of a nudge. Interesting. And view then from Rich Blues, who's got Bob next to him. So let's see how Rich gets. Let's not forget as well, Rich ended up in the lead later on in this lap. So Rich goes a bit deep. Doesn't really leave space on the exit, but to be fair, he went deep. But yeah, survived. He'd done all right. And Hay, well, surely Hay's going to nail the back of everybody here. No, Hay actually is the only person that made the apex. So well done to Hay. I mean, the rest of the race might have been bad for him, but he did really well at Brick Bend. Okay, so we'll have a look at Bob here. We've gone past the 150 marker board, and we're going a bit slow motion here towards the 100. Dave's already on the brakes. I would guess Bob might be by now. He fucking should be. But yeah, so Bob's kind of looking in this space, which I can understand, but it would be for an overtake on Dave. For anyone further forward, he's too far back. It sounded like he was going to say something. Agree. So as this is playing on, interestingly, if you see SGP's going into a big gap that Demon R has left open there, and SGP's in there and makes contact with Demon R before Bob contacts SGP and gives SGP a bit of a nudge into Steve F1, and then Bob sort of attacking Demon R a little bit as well. So an interesting run there. So SGP, well, let's have a look at him. At the 150, he's not on the brakes, but we've just started the race, so I'd expect to brake about 140 maybe. He's not on the brakes yet. Jason's on the brakes. Okay, SGP is now just started to apply a little bit of brake. Now, I would be tempted to say that SGP is too far back from the 3 cars ahead to attempt an overtake. We will see SRI take his evasive and go up the inside. And we will see as well, Demon R goes to turn in. He must have already done it. He went to turn in but didn't because
Steve
SRI was
F1
coming. Yeah. Trying to give the space. So Demon R's left space for SRI to come flying through. SGP's then tried to go into that space, but the key point for me here is he suddenly starts sliding and understeering away from the apex, now into Demon R. So this for me is where I'd say, okay, SGP has braked a touch late and gone into Demon R. He has then been tagged by Bob now, which has then nudged SGP into Steve F1. So I would say that SGP has got his braking a little bit wrong there. Not quite as bad as SRI, but not a fair overtake on Demon R, I would say. So let's now have a look at SRI. There's the 150 metre marker board. I said we'll probably brake about 140. We're not on the brakes yet, it's about 120. So we'll move it forward a little bit. So 1.5, 110. 1.5, 105. Oh, we're on the brakes at 100. And that is way too late. And you can see the moment where SRI goes, oh shit, and turns right just about now. Yeah. He realises he's not going to make it. And this is where it's catch-22. If he tries to floor it and go for the gap, it could nail Steve F1 worse. But is fully on the brakes, just trying to get the car slowed down. It can't take evasive left. There's no space unless it had gone left initially instead of right, but I think that'd have been difficult to do. And there's no doubt he's got his braking wrong, because here's the apex and here's the barrier. So yeah, right, okay, now what I want to show about Bob here is Bob does allow SGP to stay ahead, but then Rich gives him a bit of a nudge. So Bob's let SGP through. Bob is then slowing down to let everybody else through as well. Demon R gets caught out, goes the other side, but nudges him. But Bob still lets Demon R through up here. Do I show it? Yes. So Bob has now let through everybody that he possibly could have affected. So that's one of those where, yeah, Bob got his braking wrong, collected a few cars, he has waited, he's done the right thing there. Yeah, so there'd be no further action, from my opinion, on Bob or SRI or Jason or SGP, because SGP also waited for just about everybody, I think. Everybody apart from SRI, because he didn't need to wait for SRI.
Agree.
Agree. Yeah. So, explain yourself then, Ray.
Well, I got the jump on Jason, and then I managed to make the move on
Demon R receive F1.
SGP. And then I looked behind, and then when I looked forward again, I was shit.
Yeah. To be fair, easily done. And I mean, one of the reasons why it's not often that I would show the footage from every driver in an incident, but with I mean, everyone was involved.
Everybody was involved.
I mean, the only person who wasn't involved was Hay. So yeah, well done, Hay. I mean, yeah, congratulations. What a move. But yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I have shown it though is because I wanted to point out that, okay, yeah, Bob's got his braking wrong and Ray's got his braking wrong, but it's easy to do. SGP's got his braking wrong, Jason's got his braking wrong. So it can. I mean, anybody could have done it. I mean, for all we know, Jason and SGP could have done the same as you. Looked in the mirror, looked behind, and then gone, "Oh no, too late." Who knows? But it can happen. But it would have been. I mean, it's an interesting one. I think going through it like we did there as well, though, it kind of gives a steward's perspective of how we would have looked at it in terms of like the different sections of it. There was the section with SRI, but that was separate to the section with SGP and separate to this section which was Bob. But then Bob's does intermingle with SGP's, but that's the second phase of SGP's. So yeah, it would have been a tricky one to write up, but yeah.
That's alright, we've got somebody who can write.
That we have. As long as he doesn't get nailed at turn 1. Okay, so shall we have a look at the next one?
G2.
I want to just check which one it is. Alright, okay. I do want to talk about this one before we go into the footage, okay? Now,
Okay.
Reason for that is I want to kind of give a little bit of an explanation as to why we're about to look at what we're going to look at. And there's a few reasons, really. It's a bit of a clip from last week's race where during the commentary we didn't know if a driver had been hit into a corner or had perhaps braked late for a corner and collected another driver. But at the same time, during the race, there was a comment made of, "Jimmy, what are you doing?" or whoever. And it wasn't Jimmy, because Jimmy was nowhere near them. So I did want to sort of have a look at that so Jimmy could know what he was being bollocked for without being anywhere near it. But also, for the people involved, they can also see it and go, right, okay, because they may have one perspective of it, but maybe we'll be able to show, after showing this footage, it may show a different perspective. Also, I want to show it because it's funny. So let's get on to this footage in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. G2 race 7. I can't believe SRI was in the way. So we're having a look here at Dave the Hart going down the main straight. Bit of a bump with Bob and bit of a bump with Rich, I think. Down into turn 1, and there's SRI turning in. And yeah, so I think we saw that on the main screen, or like not on board with Dave. But anyway, so we're looking at it now. Bob and Dave have a little bit of a coming together there, not a lot in it. SRI moving around, a bit more contact there from Bob, but I'll come to explain that in a moment. And then into the braking zone, Dave collects SRI. Now, when I watched this, there's a few things that's interesting. Bob made contact with Dave because he was following SRI's slipstream. Once he's made contact with Dave, he's then stopped. And that's an important part for me. I do want to mention that. So you'll see Bob's trying to copy SRI's slipstream, a little bit of contact, but then he doesn't keep moving up. So it's not like he's tried to continuously keep going. There is a bit of contact, but you remember what the breaking point was for this corner, Ray?
200 metres.
200 metres. And Dave's not on the brakes yet. And we're at nearly 100 metres. And he's
just going on the brakes.
Just going on the brakes now. So, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to show this, because I understand that Dave felt he was being pinballed a bit down the straight. I can understand that, but one of the reasons why I wanted to show it is because once I'd looked at it, I was like, okay, well, what is Bob doing? Okay. Well, what Bob was doing was he was just trying to follow SRI's slipstream. Unfortunately, as he's gone to move up the track a bit, he's made contact with Dave. But this is where, it doesn't matter if it's Dave or anybody, by the way, at this point, but I want to explain the way that I personally would look at it, which is, you go, okay, Bob's moved up, he's made contact with Dave. It's what happens next that's important. That first bit of contact doesn't really matter. It's what happens next. Because if Bob keeps going up the track and hitting Dave, then it's a problem. If Dave keeps going down the track into Bob, then it's a problem either way. Now, what it looks like happened is Bob went to follow SRI. There was the contact with Dave, but then Bob has held his line. And if you rewatch it, perhaps you can rewatch it while I'm talking, Ray. You'll see Bob moving up, makes the contact, and then you'll see that he keeps the distance between his right tyres and the white lines that is over, straddling. The gap stays about the same, so he's going in a straight line, he's not moving up. And the first contact sends Dave up the track a bit into a bit of a wobble, doesn't quite make contact with Rich, but they're still having a wobble, and bounces him back down into Bob a couple of times. Now, Dave may have thought that that was Bob continuously coming up to him, I don't know. But that's one phase of it. So, as for what Bob was doing, he was trying to follow SRI's slipstream, made a bit of contact. Once that first contact had happened, Bob then did nothing wrong. He held his position, he didn't keep moving into Dave or anything like that, and Bob braked at a decent point and made the corner. Unfortunately for Dave, he has braked 100 metres too late, and in this car, if you brake 100 metres too late, you're going to end 100 metres past the corner. But luckily for Dave, SRI was there to slow down a bit. But I do think it's kind of important to show one like that, where I mean, I don't want Dave to think that I'm picking on him or anything, but like I say, he may have had one view of what he thought was happening there, and I mean, okay, I viewed it perhaps differently. I mean, Dave may have looked back at it and gone, "Oh right, okay, yeah, Bob, yeah, I see what Bob's doing, and yeah, I've missed my breaking point." I don't know, but there are kind of two parts to that as well. So your views, Ray?
Yeah, but I think SRI was being a wee bit naughty and moving the slipstream, so and
well, to be fair, he was far enough ahead to be able to do it.
Yeah, not in that sense. Yeah, but the gap was maybe. Yeah, seeing if any driver would just follow him, then maybe make
But
this stuff
so it's
up.
SRI's fault. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Bob does have that little contact, and then Dave the Harper's in a bit of a wobble, and then just a wee bit late in the brakes, and it could happen. It might have not went on the brakes because his car was unstable, and then as soon as he could get it stable again, he's hit the brakes, but it's just been too late.
Maybe. I think personally, if it had been me, I'd have been on the bug brakes. but I mean, what I'll say is, we've just watched like 8 minutes worth of footage of at least 4 people missing the breaking point by a long way. So yeah, Dave, please don't think I'm picking on you. I mean, you may have been waiting for the car to be stable, but I just wanted to. I wanted to show it so that everybody was aware, but also, I mean, we did see it on commentary, and we didn't really see what had happened. So anything we said at the time was just speculation. And also, you have to take what commentators say with a pinch of salt and pepper. So yeah, anything else to add, Ray?
Nope.
Okay. I'm trying to. Oh yes. Okay. So we've only got one more to go. This may be the shortest G spot ever. Doubt it. Okay. So we'll chat a little bit before looking at the footage of this one as well, because we mentioned it a little bit last week about drivers going to the pits. So would you like to explain pit entry etiquette, Raymond?
Yeah, so with pit entry, if you're on the opposite side from the pits and you've got a driver in between you and the pits, and you want the pits, you've got to create the space to get to the pits safely.
I'm glad you added that word safely, because otherwise I would create the space by twatting you out the way. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what you're saying. I mean, if you've got a car between you and the pits, you can't just turn into the pits and take them in with you or hit them out of the way. You've got to back out and do it safe. But here's a question for you. If you're going to... Okay, let's say it was you. I'm in between you and the pit entry. You want the pits. You back out to drop in behind me and go into the pits. But there's a car behind you. And when you lift off, that car hits you. What's the situation then?
What do you mean that car hits you?
Oh, it hits you up the arse. Because you've slowed down to, you've like, not saying banged the brakes on, but you've slowed down at a point where perhaps people wouldn't slow down. You've like you've hit the brakes to drop in behind me and move across, but there's a car behind you that can't react to you hitting the brakes and rams you up the arse. Is it their fault?
I wouldn't say it's fully their fault.
Is it dependent on the situation?
Yeah, it's dependent on the situation.
Okay.
Like, we know this was an oval, so people were at high speed, so you drop that little bit of speed and somebody's just going to come flying easily. Maybe try and get into position for the pits a wee bit more earlier than you would normally for a circuit track.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, I suppose perhaps one way to explain it would be, imagine all the people. Imagine racing around Red Bull Ring, and you want the pit lane there, and the pit lane white line rules are on, which means you have to be in the pit lane before the penultimate corner. If you treat most pit lanes like that, then you usually can't go wrong, because you may exit a corner and exit it slower or tighter to one side to clearly show I may go in the pits here. So it's a little bit like, say, Brazil, for example. If you come round Young Cow at Brazil, at some point, if you've got cars behind you, you've got to move over to the left early so no one gets up the inside of you. because if they get up the inside of you, you've got to give them space.
You can't. Yeah, you can't make it to the pits, to be honest, if somebody's inside you.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Okay, so what's the etiquette then if, let's say, for example, I'm between you and the pits, but this is before, like we're coming round the final corner, side by side, pit entry's coming up, and you're saying to me, I'm going for the pits, and I purposefully do everything I can to put myself between you and the pit entry.
You're gonna keep going till the next lap.
So it's not wrong for me to do that then, is it? Or is it? Because
It could be, because it could be, if you do that, it might be a strategy. Even though these cars you don't really need to pit, so we do a season where the tyre degradation is more, and you do have to do a pit stop, and you're in a battle with somebody, then if you get into a position that stops them going for the pits, that's been more strategic.
But would it be wrong though if you were backing out to drop in behind me and I backed out as well?
It would be a wee bit dirty.
I'm thinking that would be proper nasty. That I think that'd be bordering on sportsmanship. That
I don't know if it'd be wrong. It's borderline depending how much you're backing off, or if you're actually putting on the brakes to.
Yeah, I mean this thing. If you're not accelerating on a part of the track where it is an acceleration zone or a flat out zone, and you're off throttle or on the brakes to block someone going in the pits. Ooh, yeah. I think I'd be a bit pissed at that one.
You'd be annoyed, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
but as long as they're not slamming on the brakes to stop you and they keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, a little lift, I would say it's a bit dirty.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
I would need to go to the stewards, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't help. I'm involved.
No, I mean I'm not saying it would ever happen, but I would highly recommend anyone that finds them in that situation, don't do that, please, because we don't want to have to look into that kind of thing as stewards. But it does but it's an interesting question though, because there's things like parking it on an apex, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with
parking it on the pit lane.
Yeah. But parking it on a straight or on a pit entry, not so good. But also, I mean, there's little things like, okay, if you're being bump drafted, then really, as a car is coming up behind you and is about to nudge you, if you can upshift before they contact you, it can work in your favour, because you get the boost in a higher gear, it slows them down a little bit, so you get the benefit. Now, the ideal bump draft is nose to tail and just getting faster and faster and faster. But sometimes it's bump gap. And there's nothing wrong if, even in these Ford GTs, you're in front of someone and you do an upshift a bit early. They might tag the back of you, give you a bit of a boost. They don't intend to. You've done nothing wrong. You've not hit the brakes. You've not brake checked them. All you've done is short shifted. There's nothing wrong in that, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not a steward, so take it with a pinch of salt. But I mention it because there are some things that I can imagine some people may go, oh, well, that's a bit unfair, isn't it? Like parking on an apex. It's a bit annoying, but there's nothing wrong with it. So there are a few things. I'm thinking about it. Bob mentioned a couple of weeks ago, maybe we should ask him to give us a bit more info so we can look into it. Because he did one during the race, one of the races, he asked what's the situation with blocking. So it'd be, I would guess, what's allowed and what's not. And maybe that's something that we can sort of have a look at some point. But it'd be interesting to see, because there's some things you can do to block, which would be fine, but then there's other things that you can't. So, like, if I'm behind you, Ray, and I go to pull out to overtake you, you can move across in front of me as long as you're in front of me. But if I then move back to the right, you then can't move again.
No.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'll
As long as if you've got a part of your vehicle up the rear end of my vehicle, then I can't be moving across the front of you.
Yeah, and it's like we mentioned as well about SRI breaking, sharing the slipstream at the oval on the previous clip. Far enough ahead to do that. If it had been a lot closer to the cars behind him, then it wouldn't be like sharing the slipstream. It'd be weaving, and weaving's not allowed. So yeah, it can be fine margins sometimes. But maybe Bob, if you watch this, drop us a message, then we'll know you've watched it. Okay. And let us know what it was you wanted us to look into. Okay, should we get into this, the footage of this last one as the reason why we've waffled? And because we've waffled, it's now not going to be the shortest G-Spot ever. So let's go into this one. So I went a little early. Hang on, give me a minute. Let me just sort this out. Okay, so in a 3, 2, 1, let's go. Gee whiz, race 7. Well, not well. So we're going to have a look at Jimmy, and they're heading to the final corner at the oval. SRI sideways, Dave the Arp sideways, Jimmy on the outside. Jimmy wants the pit lane at this point and goes to duck in behind SRI, gives him a little nudge. Now, let's have a look at it from this view. Well, I will say, Jimmy does lift off, a little dab of brake, goes to tuck in, catches SRI's rear quarter. Now, what I would say with this is Jimmy's done what he needs to do in terms of lifting off, a little dab of the brake to try and tuck in. Unfortunately, there is still a bit of an overlap of the cars. I'm doing this in slow motion now, if I remember rightly, to show where he dabbed the brake, but I think if I remember rightly, I might have missed it already. But he's not just turning left, going for the pits. Now, this is where we were saying as well, if SRI was to be lifted, Jimmy's lifted off. So if SRI was to be lifting off at this point, that would be really unfair, because this is a flat out section of road and there is no reason why SRI. So Jimmy is on the brakes, moves across, but also look, Dave's nose has appeared now. So it'd be interesting to see, does Dave make contact with the back of Jimmy? I think he might do. So I'll have a quick sort of look at the side. Perhaps not there, but you can see that's the overlap that Jimmy's got. Now, he may have been caught out by the arrows on the radar. Either way, he should have known better. But he's kind of tried to do the right thing, but he has still made contact with SRI. But one of the reasons why I asked you, Ray, about what about if you lift off and dab the brake a bit to create that space to go for the pit lane.
For there, that would have been very naughty.
No, well, yeah, if you'd have done it, but what about the car behind? For Dave the Harp, he's coming around that corner flat out, like really close to him, and all of a sudden Jimmy's lifted off. If Dave hits Jimmy in that situation, I don't think there's anything Dave could do, and Dave wouldn't be at fault for anything there, would he?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
So, yeah. But it does beg the question, though, Jimmy, why the fuck did you want to pit on a race where you don't need to pit? Because that's another factor. I mean, it's not a factor, but it is a factor. The tyres were fine. You don't need fuel. You were just determined to pit for pit's sake, for pity's sake. But,
yeah.
I think we'll have to get Jimmy to explain himself.
Yeah.
Although, having said that, if you remember, after that pit stop, Jimmy did actually feel he had a benefit of fresher tyres because he was able to catch up, get through the pack, and I think had a decent finish, 5th or 6th place, something like that. If I remember
Yeah, I
rightly.
think he was behind. He was still behind SRI, so
Yeah, didn't gain anything, but didn't lose anything. But yeah, but interesting topics we've touched on there. Anything you want to raise or mention, Ray?
no.
Okay, I do want to mention something just quickly. GT7. It's been a while since we talked about GT7. I mean, I know not all the drivers probably watch this, but just a bit of information for you. I think there's only one driver that now hasn't got GT7. But don't panic, it's not ready for us to go over to yet anyway. Now, when we say that, go on.
We mean it.
Well, yeah, we do. But, I mean, we would still recommend getting it because you have to do some of the single player to unlock multiplayer. But also, if you get it, we can help you go through the process and we can still do online lobbies. But things don't work properly on the online lobbies as they should, like Boost, BOP. On certain, like if we're all in the same car, BOP is fine. But if it's different cars, it's not balanced. So there's still things for it to work out now. SGP has told me that he was listening or read. He didn't listen. He wouldn't have fucking read. He was listening to the maker of GT7, who was asked why are the online lobbies not the same as they were on GT Sport, and the answer, I believe, basically was they will be, but things have had to be different on GT7 because they've introduced this meeting place section of the game. It means that online lobbies code has had to be completely rewritten, which has had an effect on the online lobbies. Now, this meeting place thing, it's a load of bullshit. You don't even race there, you just go and drive. You can't start a race or anything like that, you just take a car and go and drive around. It's basically an online lobby without a race. But he did say all of the settings that were available on GT Sport will be available on GT7. They just need to get the coding sorted out for it. So all the things that we're used to on GT Sport, we will eventually get on GT7.
And until then, we won't be league racing. We'll have fun nights, but no league racing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, one of the things I would say as well is if you get time, folks. I mean, I did wonder whether over this Christmas period, we mentioned about doing random races on the Thursdays. Maybe we should do it GT7 random races, because then it gets people on the game. If people haven't done the single player bit, we can help them go through it while the rest of us are in the lobby.
I'd start off with, pardon me, GT Sport. At least for those that don't have GT7.
Well,
so
there's only one.
Who?
I wouldn't want to name him. I wouldn't want to name and shame him.
Fuck off.
Then. You persuaded me. No, I'm not going to tell you. Because you don't know.
Check the
I'm
message.
not going to tell you.
But no, in that way, what, has Bunzel got it?
I was told he has. I don't know. Personally, I'm not sure. But apparently...
He's been living in a tent since it came out.
Well, that's what I thought. But according to SGP, Bunzel has got it.
Nah, because you don't want that person to feel left out. Yeah, so I'd go on GT Sport. The said person isn't around and people want to go on GT7, then we'd go there. But after time, we always end up going, right, that's enough of GT Sport, let's go GT7.
Yep.
So yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just just in case that one driver goes, oh well, pointless me coming on for the random races if you get on GT7.
No, absolutely. If they were going to come on, we would make sure we were on GT Sport.
Yeah, we'd accommodate.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, that's the end of G21. If you anyone's got anything they want us to have a look at, and no, we don't mean the spots on your penis, or the JJs. But yeah, anything you want us to have a look at, drop us a message and let us know. Other than that, thank you, Ray, for joining us on the G.
No worries.
Have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon.